Every picture you have seen in this video so far was chosen and placed by a program, not by me dragging clips around on a timeline. The footage, the little animated diagrams, the captions running along the bottom, all of it was assembled automatically from my script. And this is the part of my faceless video pipeline that people ask about the most, because it is the part that actually separates something that looks made from something that looks cheap. So in this video, I'm going to pull it apart and show you exactly how the visual track gets built, line by line, from nothing but the words I wrote. How footage gets matched to each sentence, how diagrams get drawn from the structure of what I am saying, and the mistakes that made it look terrible before I fixed them. No hype, just how it actually works. Why the visuals make or break a faceless video. Let me start with why this even matters so much. A faceless video is just narration with pictures on top. There is no presenter, no face to hold your attention, so the visuals are doing all the work of keeping you watching. And here is the trap that catches almost everyone who starts out. If you just put the words of the script on the screen as text while they are spoken, it instantly looks lazy and cheap and people click away. A wall of your own narration sitting there static is the single fastest way to lose someone. So the entire job of this part of the pipeline is to make sure that never happens. Every moment on screen has to be something worth looking at, footage or a diagram or motion, and it has to change often enough that your eye never gets bored. That is the bar, and everything else is in service of clearing it. Verwens omniftis is the mam fem sentence of wingde piven. See rays that make up the picture, so what is actually on screen at any moment? It comes down to three layers working together. The first layer is B-roll, which is just stock footage, real clips of the world that illustrate what I am talking about. The second layer is diagrams, little animated charts and flows and comparisons that the system draws on the fly to explain structure. And the third layer is captions, the text running along the bottom that follows the narration word for word. B-roll carries the feel, diagrams carry the ideas that need structure, and captions carry the exact words for anyone watching on mute, which on social platforms is most people. The skill is knowing which layer fits which moment, and the system makes that call for every single paragraph of the script, automatically based on what that paragraph is actually doing. Usena preface is Timeline Denism. Let me take the B-roll first because it is the most common. For each paragraph, the system reads what I am saying and turns it into a search phrase, a short description of the kind of footage that would fit. If I am talking about a data center, it searches for a data center. If I am talking about someone working late at a laptop, it searches for that. Then it pulls matching clips from a stock library, trims them to length, and drops them in at the right moment. The trick that makes this not look random is that the search phrase comes from the meaning of the line, not just one keyword yanked out of it. A lazy version would grab the first noun and search for it, and you would get nonsense. A good version describes the scene the sentence is painting, so the footage actually matches the feeling of what you are hearing. It is not perfect, and I will get to where it goes wrong, but when it lands, it looks intentional. A real example, start to finish. Let me make this concrete with one line. Say my script reads, most engineers hit the same wall when their setup grows. The system reads that, decides it is a feeling rather than a structure, and so it reaches for B-roll. It builds a search phrase like a frustrated developer at a cluttered desk late at night, pulls a few matching clips, and trims the best one to the length of that sentence. Then it pins that clip to the phrase the same wall, so the footage lands exactly as I say it. The very next paragraph might list 4 things to fix, and now the system sees a shape, a list, so instead of footage, it draws an animated set of 4 points that build in one at a time. 2 adjacent lines, 2 completely different visual decisions, both made automatically from nothing but the words, that back and forth, footage for feeling and diagrams for structure, is the rhythm that keeps the whole thing from ever feeling flat. How diagrams get built from the structure of the script. The diagrams are the part one am proudest of, because they are not stock anything, they are drawn fresh every time. Here is the idea. A lot of what I say has a hidden shape, a comparison of 2 things, a process with steps, a list of options, a few numbers worth seeing. The system looks at each paragraph and asks whether it has one of those shapes, and if it does, it builds the matching diagram automatically. 2 things being compared becomes a clean side-by-side table. A process becomes a flow with each step appearing in turn as I describe it. A set of options becomes an animated list that builds one item at a time. The content of the diagram comes straight out of my own words, so the picture is never just decoration, it is actually carrying the point I am making right then. That is what makes it feel like a real explainer instead of a slideshow with clip art. Why I draw the diagrams on my own machine, one practical note on the diagrams, because it ties into how the whole pipeline runs. Those animations are not cheap to produce. Each one is actually drawn frame by frame into a little video clip, and that takes real computing time. I do that locally on my own graphics card rather than paying a service for every render, because a single video might have a dozen or more diagrams, and I make a lot of videos. Doing it on hardware I already own means each diagram costs me nothing beyond a few minutes of the machine's time. The trade-off is that it is the slowest single step in the whole pipeline. Sometimes the difference between a render finishing in 5 minutes and one dragging on for 20. I have decided that is a fair price for visuals drawn exactly to my content instead of pulled off a shelf, but it is a genuine cost and worth knowing if you ever build your own version of this. Captions that come from the script, not from the audio. The captions seem like the simplest layer, but there is a detail here that matters a lot. Most tools generate captions by listening to the audio and guessing at the words, which is fine until it hits a name or a technical term, and then it confidently writes the wrong thing. My captions do not work that way. Because the whole video is built from my script, the captions are pulled straight from that script text, the exact words spelled the way I wrote them, so a tricky product name or an unusual term is always correct because the system never had to guess. It already knew. It just borrows the timing from the audio, lining up when each word is spoken, but takes the actual spelling from the script. That one decision quietly kills an entire category of embarrassing caption errors that you see all over automated videos. How everything gets timed to the narration, so you have footage, diagrams, and captions, but the magic is in the timing. Because a great visual at the wrong moment is worse than no visual at all. Here is how that works. Every visual cue is anchored to a specific phrase in the narration. When I write the visual track, each picture is attached to a short snippet of what I am about to say. Then the system listens to the generated voiceover, finds the exact moment those words are spoken, and fires the visual right there. So the data center clip appears the instant I say data center, not 5 seconds early and not late. The picture changes exactly when the meaning changes, and because everything is pinned to the actual audio, nothing drifts out of sync no matter how the timing of the narration shifts. When it works, you do not notice it at all, which is the entire point. Good timing is invisible. What good pacing actually feels like. There is one more thing that took me a long time to get right, and that is pacing. It is not enough to have good footage and good diagrams. They have to change at the right speed. Too slow, and a single clip sits there long enough that your attention drifts and the whole video feels sluggish. Too fast, and the screen is flickering between shots so quickly that it feels frantic and you cannot actually read the diagrams. The sweet spot for me is a fresh visual every several seconds, with the diagrams given a little longer to breathe because you genuinely need the time to read them. The system aims for that rhythm automatically by spacing the cues out evenly across the narration, but I still sit and watch the finished video to feel it because pacing is one of those things a number cannot fully capture. You know good pacing when you stop noticing the cuts at all and just follow the idea, the failure modes, and the self-checks that catch them. Now let me be honest about how this breaks, because it breaks in funny ways. Early on, the search phrase for a clip would sometimes come back with footage that was wildly off-topic, technically related to a keyword, but completely wrong in spirit. A diagram would occasionally try to cram so much text in that you could not read it in the few seconds it was on screen. And the worst one, my favorite disaster, was a bug where a visual silently failed and left a blank green slide playing for 20 full seconds while the narration kept going. Every one of those taught me to add a check. So now the system inspects its own finished output. It samples frames from the video and looks for the tells, a frame that is mostly flat green, a stretch where nothing has changed for too long, footage that does not match. It flags those to me before I ever publish. The machine quietly checking its own work is the thing that turned this from a fragile toy into something I actually trust to run. What I would tell someone trying to build this. If you wanted to build something like this yourself, here is the most important lesson I learned, and it is not a technical one. Make the script the single source of truth for everything and build outward from there. The footage, the diagrams, the captions, the timing, every one of them should trace back to the same script. The moment you let any layer drift and live on its own, you get the desync and the errors that make automated video look automated in the bad way. The second lesson is to make the system check itself, because you will not catch everything by hand across dozens of videos, and a tool that quietly tells you when it failed is worth 10 times one that silently ships something broken. Start with one layer, get it solid, then add the next. Do not try to build all three at once. So that is the visual track from a plain script to a finished video that does not look like a slideshow. Footage matched to the meaning of each line, diagrams drawn fresh from the structure of what I am saying, captions taken straight from the script so they are always right, and every single piece timed to the exact moment the words land. None of it is magic, all of it traces back to the same script, and the self-checks are what keep it honest, and the same lesson keeps showing up everywhere in this pipeline. Pick one source of truth, build every layer outward from it, and make the system tell you loudly when it fails. Get those two habits right, and almost everything else is just adding pieces on top. If you want more grounded, hands-on breakdowns of building things like this, with the real failures included and none of the hype, subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.